Alrighty, hello everyone, what is going on? Esty here, and we're gonna do a little special today, and another little Game Doctor episode. Pretty much answering the question, when is the right time for game consultation? I've heard this quite a few times, and I'm sure the question arises when people do hear about game consultation. Then it's like, well, when is the right time? When is too late? You know, I want to have something to show them, something to have game consultation on. So like, when is it, right? And I wanted to answer that question today and give a little bit of clarity and make it a lot more digestible. And it'll be nice and short and sweet. So the very, very easy and plain out answer is, depending on what you want out of it, there's never a wrong time. Allow me to explain. Sometimes you could be very late in development. Games coming up, you have a deadline ready, you have a release date ready, and that's still not the wrong time, right? And a way to see that is, as long as your expectations are there, because a lot of the game consultation could be like, hey, some of these systems, there's a lot of tension here, not a lot of fun here, and you can't rework systems, right? It doesn't mean that the feedback won't be there, but as long as your expectations are, well, I can only do some polishing around things, and you're ready for that, and you're ready to only be able to digest the things that you can take on, there's no wrong time. There's still a lot of work that could be done, and a lot of double checking and box checking right before release. And the way I like to see it is kind of like going for your routine oil change, right? It's too late to work on process the car because you already bought the car. You already have it. You have the certain model. It's not going to become something else. Your little buggy is not all of a sudden going to become a sports car. It's not. But you're going to go for your oil change, your routine, and when you go, they check your fluids and they check your windshield wiper and your power steering fluids, and they do all this extra stuff that you don't see, right? And you just feel better about it, right? Because somebody double checked to make sure it's all good, right? And they'll be like, hey, you should get a tire rotation soon, right? All these things that you don't normally look at, they're just going to double check because it's just the normal thing that you're going to do. And it's the same expectations if you have a date right around the corner and you're like, my game has to release in 3 weeks. Well, there's not much you can do there. There's not much to work with because you don't want to mess with big systems right before release, right? That could invite a whole host of other problems. So what happens here is then you have somebody come in and just really check to make sure everything is refined, all the UI is working, and all the UI you would expect. So as somebody who digests millions of games, you know, tons and tons and tons of stuff, the needs of the player and the expectations of a player constantly evolve, right? And other games that are coming out while you're developing your game sometimes are going to push the boundaries of what people are going to come to expect from UI work and what games are offering. What is the standard? That's constantly evolving. That's something that you can't fake. So unless while you're making your game, you are keeping up on every other game and where the market's at and playing everything, it's impossible for you to check everything, right? Just like you don't check all the fluids on your car before you leave. You expect to go to an oil change and have a professional check it for you. It's the same thing with game consultation. So if you're going right before release or you have a date coming up and you can't mess with a lot of systems, those are the expectations, to just double check your work, right? Every book needs an editor. So that brings me to the other end of the spectrum. Well, what about really early? Like, what is too early? I have a little alpha thing. Does that work? Well, I'm here to tell you that if you asked me this question a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have a different answer. But here today, I could tell you that there's almost no time too early. So I've had some people that I've worked with, even in the conceptual phases, where it's like, there's not actually anything to play, right? That's almost as early as it can get. It's still an infant in somebody's brain. It's a little seed, right? And they have these ideas. Well, this is my plan, right? I've been working with this idea and this idea, and I don't know what's the one to cultivate. I don't know which one to water, right? And that's a big question, because once you start to water that plant, it's going to start to blossom, and then it's going to need all that work, right? You have to invest all that time. You know, game development can take years depending on the project and the scope. It could take years, right? That's a lot of effort, sweat, and tears that go into game development. So knowing where to start and what seed to water is hugely important. So when I worked with this developer, he's been in the industry, he's worked for some big publishers and stuff like that, and he had a couple different ideas, and he just started throwing them at me. I think it was about 4 different game ideas. And in that process, I got to hear it out right away, make a match with like 3 to 4 other games that it was similar to that were either successful or, you know, had a bigger name. So you got to do some analysis there. The price point for hearing the project and what they were going for and their expectations for it. Oh, well, you're going for this kind of price game, it seems like, with what you're telling me. These are the kind of things that you're going to run into, because I've seen those things in these games where this is a Frankenstein of those kind of things, and these are things you might have to work around. You're going to have to think about the UI here, what the player is going to be experiencing here, how's the variety in this part, because this is what you're going for. And tossing and dancing in this conversation can really start to show you, are these things you can work around? Are these things that need to be a little bit more ripe? I don't know about the seed. That does sound like things that I didn't really think about that angle. You know, this is going to be a little bit tough, or this is a little bit too close to that idea, and they ran into a lot of issues here. Or this is like, wow, this shows a lot of potential. These are things that I could work around. Oh, there's a lot to build upon here. And so, how do you put a price on that, right? There's nothing to actually play, but this could be saving you hundreds of hours of development time before you got to see those roadblocks that you would run into, right? And that's in a way infinite. So as long as your expectations are there, and really what you are looking for in those different phases of where your game's at, whether it's still in its seed form in your brain, or whether you have an actual tangible product where we can rework mechanics and catch things before they go too far, ultimately you could save infinite funding, time, energy, and that's the power of a good game consultant. That's the power of a game doctor, and that's why it's so important. So in closing, I want to say that every book needs an editor. Every pro athlete needs a coach. Every game needs a game doctor. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.